Hello. Hello, everybody. You're very welcome to this FEMRITE Week of Literary Activities. Today we open this up with Flavia, the chair of the session. Flavia Kabuye, board chair FEMRITE, would like to give us some opening remarks.
Okay, Flavia seems to be having trouble getting in, but we hope she will. We hope she will come in shortly, but as she still not there. Okay, but my name is Hilda Tonjeire. I'm the executive director of FEMRITE, and I would like to welcome you all to this session that we are having, to the week of literary activities. We are really excited to host this because after having a year that almost looked like, like we were at a standstill, like we were just not moving. It is beautiful that this is where we are, and that this October, the last week of October, we are doing this. We are into the week of activities to connect, to network, to have dialogue, and to be with each other, to energize each other at this time of the year. I would like to welcome our guest, our chief guest, Brian George, the Public Affairs Officer from the U.S. Embassy, Kampala. Thank you so much for being part of this event. We are excited to host you and to hear from you. The embassy, the U.S. Embassy has been doing a great job in cultural preservation. And so we are very excited that you're part of this today. We would like to welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Wale Okediran from Nigeria, but I think actually now based in Ghana because of the different things that he does. We are excited to have you with us. Dr. Wale is the Secretary General of the Pan-African Writers Association. We will hear a lot more from him later, and also he will be properly introduced, but for now I would like to say you're very welcome. I want to welcome our friends, Dr. Okot Benge from the Literature Department, Makerere University, Dr. Dorothea Tuhura, the head of department from Chambogo University. The two universities have been very, very instrumental in supporting FEMRITE work, in supporting literature in the country, and so we are really excited that you're with us tonight. The esteemed friends of FEMRITE and lovers of the literary arts, all of you listening in, you're most welcome. Our most generous panelists, you will get introduced later, but I want to say welcome, very, very welcome to this session. The board members of FEMRITE, the members of FEMRITE, you always make this a great week. You make FEMRITE a great association. You make literature matter in the country, and so I welcome you. Thank you so much. I would like to give a very brief background as I pay tribute to the other FEMRITE members who are not here, those who started with the week of literary activities, our predecessors who were here. This week was started to celebrate literature. I remember we started in 2000, in the year 2000, and we've carried it on to date because it is an important week that shines light on literature in the country, that shines light on what we do in the country and on the importance of literature. So we've continued since then. The first week was celebrated under the theme Ugandan Women's Writings in the New Millennium. And we celebrated with Professor Ama Ata Aido from Ghana. And since then, we have not looked back because we realize that this is very important. And we appreciate all the other literary initiatives in the country, Writivism, Lantern Meet of Poetry, BN Foundation, all those that are making great contribution to literature. Sometimes, of course, we get to complain when, for example, a few months back during the COVID pandemic, when it was said that literary arts were part of the non-essential, sectors in the country, and we thought, but how can it be non-essential with all the contributions that literature is making in the country, the employment opportunities, the contribution to GDP, it's quite almost 3%, and from one sector, 3% contribution to the country's GDP. Really, that is something that's something big that should be recognized, that should be credited, and so we insist that we are not a non-essential sector, no. Literary arts are part of the essential sector. If you look at, for example, what is happening with mental health, if we had activities that literary activities allowed to flourish and make a contribution to mental health, yeah, we would not be sometimes where we get to. So I think we need to speak well, we need to connect, we need to make all this interconnectedness, to recognize and speak to all the interconnectedness in the sectors, so that we give credit where credit is due. We will have quite a lot of activities. We will have panel discussions. We will have writing workshops. Sometimes when we tell people we all need to write our stories, the question is, how do I start writing? So one of the things that we will do during this week is to introduce people to what to write, how to write. And so sign up so that you're part of the activities. We will have a workshop on how to tell stories. We keep telling young people that they need to write, they need to read, but and then we go and read to them, we tell them stories, but probably we need to do it better to attract them and show them the way into literary arts. And so in order to do that well, we have a storytelling professional. One of us, a Ugandan daughter, Philippa Kabali Kagwa, who now lives in Cape Town, but she's a professional storyteller, an award-winning storyteller, and she is going to hold a workshop, which we really appreciate. Very many people have signed up, but more who are interested in promoting storytelling for cultural preservation. You can join in and have the skills, have the training. Because of the context, we are having challenges, of course, working online and all that, but it is also an opportunity, because like now we have very many people from other countries in Africa, and even on other continents. We have people who are going to join in from the US, people are joining in from the UK, and that is because we are learning the new way. It's a challenging new way, but it is a way that is also giving us opportunities. So we shall have everything online on Facebook, FEMRITE Facebook, and Twitter and YouTube. Please get on and encourage other people to get on. This is a time to celebrate each other, to celebrate Ugandan literature, to celebrate African literature, celebrate Ugandan writers and African writers, but also speak with each other about the policies that we interact with on a daily, which govern our sector, but probably which we need to understand more and engage with a little bit more. So let's do that together. We would like together to speak about these things we will have a panel as women writers. We'll have I think I'm really looking forward to that panel, Women Writers in Conversation, because it is important that we have these conversations. Yeah, it is important. It will be led by our most generous sister, Zukiswa Uwana. She is in Nairobi. We are waiting for that. We need to speak about money, so we will have a panel about money and the arts and the economies of the sector. How do we interact with that? Very many artists at this time are going hungry, for example, because if you depend on performance, there are no performances. If you depend on organizing poetry readings, they are not there. So how do we interact with that? So we are going to have all these conversations, and so let's get together and let's talk let's speak with each other and see how we proceed how we proceed as a sector. I'm very glad that we have the Ministry of Gender on board. In one of the sessions, they will be speaking to us also, because the Ministry of Gender is in charge of the culture sector. And so we will interact with her and with them, and all, as I said, we need to recognize the interconnectedness between these cultures and our practice in order to move forward as a sector. I already see our honorary member, Marimu Austin Bukenya, and I have his own. I see him online already engaging with us, and he will give us the final keynote address on Saturday. It's a week of, it's a week of events. Yeah, very, very interesting, and we look forward to everything. I have a message from our honorary member, Ade Bukema. She's from Holland. She worked with us as a volunteer and did great work with us. And eventually, before she left, the board of FEMRITE gave her honorary membership. And she says she wishes us well during this week. Last year, she was here, 2019. She celebrated the week of activities with us. She cannot be here this week because of the obvious COVID-19 that has locked the world doors. But she sends her regards, and I am sure most probably she's watching this on Facebook. Thank you all. I wish you a beautiful week. I wish you a blessed week. And I would like to end by thanking a team that has worked to put this together. The chairperson, normally when we have a task force, when we have a week of activities, we put in place what we call a task force. The chair of the task force this year has worked tremendously. I don't know, she will even call at midnight and say, Hilda, we've forgotten this, we need a generator, And I say, okay, Beatrice, can we wait for morning? But I really want to recognize Beatrice Akite for the tremendous job she has done in putting together this week. Every single day for almost 2 months, she's been coming here and working with us. I really thank her a lot. I thank the other task force members, Wolayo Joyce, Fortunate Tusasire, Juliet Kushaba, Regina Asinde, Flavia Kabuye, and many others. I didn't write the list, but they know the great job that they have put together. And so with those remarks, a lot of remarks, I apologize. I want to end here, and I will I will introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker, Brian George from the U.S. Embassy, the Public Affairs Officer from the U.S. Embassy, Uganda. I would like to welcome you to give your solidarity statement, in solidarity with FEMRITE and the culture sector and the literary sector. Thank you all listening in. I wish you a beautiful and fruitful evening.
Take a moment to see if you are unmuted, and if you're unmuted, you can go ahead and mute yourself. Might help with some of the background noise. All right, so welcome to everyone who's joining us this afternoon from Uganda, and good morning to everyone who's joining us from the United States. The United States Embassy in Uganda is pleased to support this virtual literary exchange, and we're proud to have supported previous editions of this festival as well. Free expression in literature and the arts is a core element of a robust society. It's no coincidence that countries with a free and healthy creative sector also have strong economies fueled by innovation and invention. We know that this is a particularly challenging time for the humanities, already facing budget constraints due to a false competition with STEM fields. COVID has placed even greater pressure on cultural institutions, the arts, and artists. At the same time, we know that the arts play a critical role in helping us to communicate, document, and process times of uncertainty and upheaval. We also know that periods of great stress, such as we find ourselves in today, have also given birth to some of the most powerful and enduring works of art and literature in human history. Even if we find ourselves separated by thousands of miles, as we do today, the literature provides us a means to connect with each other and to learn from each other. We see this with the participation of American authors in the festival this week, and we have seen this in FEMRITE events celebrating American authors like Maya Angelou and Toni Morrison, whose works have impacted people around the globe. The United States Embassy is pleased to have helped foster these connections through exchange programs such as the Fulbright program, which has brought U.S. researchers, scholars, and including artists, writers, and professors of literature to Uganda, and through the prestigious International Visitors Leadership Program, in which FEMRITE's Hilda Twanjiwe participated. Hilda's experience connected her with counterparts in the United States and led to the creation of a very special initiative FEMRITE is launching with U.S. Embassy support for Ugandan and American women to connect, to share their stories, and to create memoirs which we will all be able to read. So thank you to Hilda, and thank you to everyone at FEMRITE for your leadership in helping Ugandan and American writers tell their stories and share them with the world. I'd like to give you a particular round of thanks and congratulations for taking the initiative to make this a virtual experience, and for adapting to these challenging times and yet still finding a way to create opportunities for this exchange and really a celebration of the power of literature throughout this week. So thank you. And once again, it's a pleasure for the Embassy to be part of this project.
Thank you very much, Mr. George. Mr. Brian George, thank you very much for the statement, and thank you for making time to be part of this event. This shows the importance that you attach to this. I would like to call Dr. Okot Benge from the Literature Department, Makerere University. Welcome, Dr. Benge.
Yes, good afternoon. I hope you are hearing me.
Yes, we hear you loud and clear. It's an honor to have you with us tonight.
The Executive Director of FEMRITE, the Public Affairs Officer of the U.S. Embassy, leaders of different partner organizations, writers, performers, publishers, art critics, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a pleasure to talk to you this afternoon. Since its founding, FEMRITE has had a collaborative relationship with the Department of Literature at Makerere University. Students and members of staff of the department have always participated in activities of FEMRITE. The department too have had many joint ventures with FEMRITE, organizing many events in partnership, workshops, symposiums, conferences, etc. We at Makerere University are majorly concerned with the literature as an academic discipline. We analyze and critique literary works and research on literature to generate new knowledge. Our collaboration with FEMRITE has helped us extend this to the practical realm, community outreach, where the writer, the publisher, the work of art are juxtaposed to the societal realities and mutual coexistence established. Although most of the founders of FEMRITE came originally from the Department of Literature and Literature, FEMRITE has carved an important niche for itself on the literary scene in Uganda and beyond. It has become an important driving engine of literary production. It is a force to reckon with, and many scholars from different parts of the world have picked interest in the work of FEMRITE, of which we are immensely proud. Even COVID-19 has not dampened FEMRITE's spirit. I see it is moving on ahead, and we look forward to a productive workshop and an exciting week of exchange of ideas and new experiences. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Okot Benge. I should have started by saying that Makerere University is my alma mater, and so I pay tribute to what the university as an institution has done in my life, how it has built me and empowered me to be who I am today. And I know it's not just me, it is many members of FEMRITE, even those who start at FEMRITE and move out into either into other sectors or into other institutions, doing great things, literary things in other institutions. And we recognize that together with Chambogo University, we do recognize that as the seeds that you plant, and so we are very, very proud of you. I will move to our, we are closing into our keynote, and I will hand over to Dr. Dorothy Atubura, who will take us through that. But I would like to introduce her to you, for those of you who might not know her, or those who know little about her. I would like to say that she is a Fulbright alumni. Again, we are connecting to the US.
Yes.
Yeah, we are again connecting to the United States of America. And she is a lecturer at Chambogo, as we already said, teaches folklore and film. She's the current chair of the literature department at Chambogo University, growing more brains to join the sector. Welcome, Dorothy.
Thank you so much, Hilda, for that beautiful introduction. I want to welcome you all that are watching us on different platforms for this week of literary activities as we celebrate FEMRITE's mark on in this literary world and creative world in which they try to stamp in the importance of the art. We want to welcome you all, as I want to appreciate the partnerships that we have had for these particular activities to happen. We appreciate the US Mission Uganda, we appreciate Makerere University, my alma mater, my home, my former home where I grew as an academic, in partnership with Chambogo University Literature Department. I welcome you all to this panel, and I would like to begin by welcoming our keynote speaker for this session, who is none other than Dr. Wale Okediran. He is a medical doctor and former member of the Federal House of Representatives in Abuja, Nigeria. He is a former national president of the Association of Nigerian Authors, which is a unique experience because he's both a medical doctor and as well as an author. He is the current Deputy Secretary General for the Writers Union of Africa, Asia and Latin America, as well as the Secretary General of the Pan-African Writers Association. He is a published author of 14 novels, many of which have won local and international literary prizes such as the American Poetry Association Book Prize, the Commonwealth Literature Prize Shortlist, the ANA Prize for Children's Literature, and several others. Shall we kindly, if you could mute your mics so we can have we can hear each other. Dr. Wale, in addition, has authored several biographies of some Nigerian leaders. His collaborative works include human rights educational books for children and an encyclopedia of post-colonial literature in English. His book, Tenants of the House, which is a fictional account of his stay in the Federal House of Representatives, was the co-winner of the 2010 Wale Soyinka Prize for African Literature and has now been adapted as a motion picture directed by Kunle Afolayan. The film premiered in 2019 to a rousing reception in Abuja, Nigeria. In 2020, Dr. Wale founded the Abedi International Writers Residence in Nigeria. It was the first of its kind and hosted 150 writers from 10 African continents in the first writer. You are welcome, Dr. Wale, to speak to our listeners.
Thank you.
Dr. Wale, we don't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sure we can. Thank you.
So my last encounter with FEMRITE was in 2016 in Uganda during the 20th anniversary. And I still have very pleasant memories of that time. I want to commend FEMRITE for what it's doing. And I think it's a big challenge to many writers organizations in Africa. FEMRITE is so well organized that the idea of activities continue to come from the state. I want to welcome my friends who are here from Nigeria, from Ghana, from all over the globe. And I also want to introduce my programs officer, Professor Yoklo, who is with me here in Accra and for her. So my lecture will just be something like an interactive session because the topic is something that many writers are familiar with. And to just discuss literary arts and your foreign work. Dorothy, can I start with the slides?
Sure, feel free to start with the slides.
Let me move to the slides. I can start talking from here. Well, we are talking of, thank you. We are talking of unfolding war. Next slide. When we talk of unfolding war, we are talking about the global health crisis that has arisen from the COVID pandemic. And of course, along with the pandemic and some other problems. poverty, unfriendly policies, and in some instances, political upheaval. So these are the issues that has affected the arts and cultural heritage. And then the situation has also driven many artists, both employed and independent, into complicated legal situations. And so we are trying to attend what we can call a new normal. The new normal is not actually new. It's not a new terminology. We used it before in another kind of 207 to 208, then of course 208 to 2012, and now the time is with us. That's that. Now, the unfolding world is a state in which economy, society, and everything settles following a crisis. And there are so many ways to adapt. One of them is limiting person-to-person contact, like handshakes and hugs, and then distances. And I think, in the look of things, this will continue for the next remainder of the year. And then as long as the world has not found a cure for COVID-19, we may have to adjust to what we call this new normal for a very long time. That's it. Then, with the new normal and the interruption, as we have had closures and cancellations. For example, during the first quarter of 2020, as agriculture sector generation and had the work progressively restricted their public activities and then completely closed down due to the pandemic. Back in China, military organizations are closed, and as events are postponed or cancelled, either voluntarily or by government handles. And this includes galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. And then film and television productions, theater, orchestra, performances, concerts, musical and art festivals are all affected. We are familiar with major commercial art festivals like the Hong Kong Art Festival and Art Festival which were cancelled. And by March this year, from what we know, most cultural institutions across the world are definitely closed. And where we are allowed, we had in-person exhibitions, events, also cancelled or postponed. That's that. Yes. And one of regrettably, well, this is a very familiar place. A few years ago, and this is one of the fourth edition of the Daily Review, and that's during Ghana, one of our very honorable fellows, and the International Writers' Residence is one of the art activities that have to cancel. We've been closed down for the last 6 months because of this COVID, and we hope that by next year we'll be able to resume. Next slide. And making a living as an artist, we need to talk about that because it's not only through writing or through the artistic thought as artists make their authors make their income. Many of them support their income with public appearances. For example, in France, the 2017 study found that 35% of book authors have to make public appearances for their work, such as festivals. And half of these authors have also made multiple appearances in a year. The same study found that 57% of these authors conduct another professional activity in addition to writing. And some jobs typically being in teaching, research, or journalism. And this is showing that even in the most advanced countries, authors and artists still have to combine their vocation with other things. And why authors rely on these public appearances so that people there has been a trend not paying authors. So that authors' income usually come in a variety of sources. Next slide. Of course, the primary sales original physical and digital writers make their money from different sources. The first is the primary sales of their work. And then secondary income comes from film adaptations, audiobooks, and then public appearances include readings and events at art festivals. We also have exhibitions, the sale, price, royalties, awards, and class. And then when we did this little research, we saw that percentage of authors who earn their income solely from writing vary from country to country. In the UK, about 40% of authors make their income solely from writing. In the US, 67%. Africa, less than 5% of authors make their income from writing. And of course, we know that the new normal, or what we call the foreign world, have affected literary arts in several ways. And the main reason why this has happened is because under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, everyone has a right to freely participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts and to share in scientific advancement and benefits. Therefore, the ability of professional authors to make a living is dependent heavily on the participation of people around the world. And due to this evolving use of closures and participation across the world, it became obvious that long-term financial impacts on artists will vary greatly with existing disparities, especially for institutions without an endowment fund being worse off. Next slide. And the effects, as you can see on literature and publishing, have been very severe. As a result of the discussions on gatherings of people, many literary festivals, commercial book fairs, and book launches were cancelled or postponed. And such cancellations as well as book closure had a significant impact on the ability of publishers to bring new books, new works to the public, as well as supporting for writers to perform at paid speaking events. Many bookshops were forced to close their doors, and on the research that was carried out by the Society of Authors in April this year, 78% of artists cancelled their events after COVID-19 pandemic, and while 29% suffered as a result of closed commissions, and 30% of writers are not even sure of how their career will go. And for me, as a writer, I've also had some personal experience. I had to postpone the publication of new book, Madagascar, because of the pandemic. Yes, sir. And that is Madagascar, my latest novel, which is a fictional account of the Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria. After a lot of work had gone into the book, we had to suspend publication because of the pandemic. So I'm also affected. Yes, sir. And then when we go to the issue of into the area of films, film production, you can also see that the pandemic seriously. Production and release of many films were suspended or delayed. And festivals had to be cancelled. And by March this year, estimates given of losses of about $5 billion worldwide for the film industry, while the April estimates went on to losses of about $20 billion, just to show you how the pandemic has affected the film industry. And for those of you who are film buffs, you know that famous productions like Avatar 2, Matthew 4, had to be suspended. And then, normally, when the film is released, movie theaters usually enjoy a 2 to 3 months of cinema before the film goes into home video release. But this year, that was not the case because cinemas were closed. So many films just went into the home video release phase, meaning that a lot of revenues that would have accrued from the theaters are lost. Next slide. Next. And many films that were festivals that were postponed, familiar Cannes, Venice Film Festival, many African Indian film festivals and Indian film festivals are postponed. An interesting, I would say, an unusual thing happened at the 20 Sundance Film Festival, which took place in the US. Many attendees fell ill with flu-like symptoms, and that was what led to the issue of the film being called, and the event being called Sundance Play. And it was presumed to be one of the first mass transportation events of COVID-19 in the United States. And this was more than a month before the global pandemic happened. So that film festival led to a very bad incident of infection when the after started. Next slide. Again, on a personal note, I was affected because my film, the adaptation of my book, Ghana from the House, even though the premiere took place in Abuja, we were about to go to cinema when the pandemic set in. And so we have to postpone indefinitely cinema clearance of this film. And so I'm still indebted the tune of millions of naira in the bank because of this delay in release. Next slide. Then when we go to the television industry, just like cinema, we also have to, a lot of scripted and unscripted shows have to be delayed globally. While some television and radio programs, production were without the usually normal live studio audience. Or sometimes this production was from the homes of the presenters. And this again, you agree with me, led to a lot of losses in the financial income. And then we also had complete cancellations, including series, television series, which have been running for decades. Again, those of you who are familiar with this know The Bold and the Beautiful, Casualty, Days of Our Lives, among other international television series that were cancelled. That's right. And then when we go to the libraries and archives, they also face similar but different situations. For example, some libraries are not able to maintain full service, while some have some restrictions, and others provided minimal services, while others just have to do complete closure. Although experts say that the risk of COVID-19 transmission on paper is very low, some libraries still impose a waiting period before handling the convicts, while others made it clear and no one expected to become very rich on the face of normal. People didn't want to catch any virus, even from books. Then librarians who had to provide services during the pandemic, included those who had to maintain medical libraries, or those who operated prisons and who operated libraries from prisons, which have facilities. So generally, many public libraries have to cancel their programs. Some people have to wait longer periods to access the facilities. Next. Then, when we go to music, performing arts, film festivals, the situation is still the same. Example, the 2020 Eurovision Song Contest was cancelled, and for the first time since its inauguration in 1956, which people believe is a very negative thing. And even the venue of the contest, the Rotterdam Ahor, was converted into a temporary COVID-19 hospital, just to show you how serious this was. And then, of course, due to physical requirements, when performing art venues were closed, while rehearsals, including rehearsals and performing art schools. In some cases, like the Edinburgh Festival, which was done after World War, it was cancelled for the first time in more than 60 years. Of course, in Africa, many book festivals, such as the Lagos International Book Festival, the Yake Book Festival, both in Nigeria, as well as the Page Book Festival in Atlanta, had to be shifted to virtual festivals because of the pandemic. That's right. Then, in the area of publishing and literature, many writers, because of the ability to perform poetry readings or live book readings, had to do so by offering impromptu performances from their homes. Well, some of them went into live streaming exercises, and then publishers had to go digital because of the lack of physical distribution of books. They had to go digital. And some booksellers have to adapt to providing free shipping, or what they call curbside pickup in closed shop fronts, or giving book by video, and setting up partnerships with other businesses such as florists, or even in barbing shops. And some bookshops, on the other hand, operated fully by phone, by email, or web order, and other people offered free delivery, particularly internet sellers like Amazon. So these are some of the ways people are attracted to the holding way. Yes, sir. Then other adaptations happened because books that had to do with the pandemic had boom sales. Some of them becoming bestsellers. People going back to literature on the subject of the epidemics, such as published by Benton. And examples are given here. The Cameron, which was written as part of 1953, or a general of the first year, written by Daniel 1722, of Commons. Many of them became instant bestsellers once people started going back to read about epidemics. And then, of course, we have the publishers of news magazines who also recorded boom because they were writing coronavirus related articles. And then digital editions of books were free. And then publishers also do a lot of money because many academicians were writing articles related to the pandemic. I've estimated 50,000 articles and chapters written on COVID-19 in the last few weeks. Yes, sir. And for me, on a personal note, I also went into what I called Corona Tales for Children. I wrote some highly well-illustrated books for children. with the hope of educating them on what the virus is all about. And this was done in graphical text, easy to understand stories for children. Next slide. This particular book, which was also on COVID-19 literature, 30th of Pious Weekend, this I wrote for the primary school state children to educate them in simple language about the pandemic. And these books have been adopted by many organizations, NGOs, distributed freely to children to help them to understand them. Next slide. And then this third book is for the secondary school age, Alima State Village, also on COVID-19 visit, whereby a young girl who was stranded in a village during the lockdown period, who to use at time villagers on how to cope with the pandemic. Then this book has been in the hands of school children now, and it's helping them to understand what the pandemic is all about. Next slide. So in the area of art and culture, a lot of adaptations of the place. We have financial stimulus from government and charities, from artists, to help them to cope. And because of the poverty and the losses of artists, government and agencies came to their support. But this is not everywhere. There are some countries that are not really good. And when we started reopening the lockdown public, various techniques and strategies were employed by art and cultural centers to reduce the risk of transmission of COVID-19. This included physical barriers, this reducing the attendance numbers, we have to restrict attendance at accidents. We said the number of people who said highly, wearing of masks and mandatory, provision of hand sanitizer, and one will through exhibitions. Some physical events took place outdoor with the mandatory 6 meter physical distance, and then we also have computer tests. Then of course we have areas of drive-in cinema, where cinema goers have to view cinemas from the safety of their vehicles, of their cars. Anyway, next step. Again, because of the need for people who are isolated to have access to cultural activities, some cultural organizations started providing online activities in social media, to virtual reality, as a way to continue fulfilling their mission. And we also started this era of digitally accessible apps and photo contests. Many of them were given freely, and then we, even though there are some copyright infringement of copyright law, which I'll go to that later, but the demand for those who are in home isolation was so great in artistic content that many things were given free of charge, and copyright laws were not really followed. That's all. Then many artists, because people's mental health are being affected, and many artists thought that's one of the ways to help was to give impromptu performances. There are home accounts, many musicians, although delayed, they are also delayed the release of the album due to the pandemic. Example of Lady Gaga and Lady Gaga were given, while other musicians came together to organize what we call virtual concerts, both of contemporary and classical music. And often these concerts were able to help those in social isolation, and they were sent through social media platforms. And of course, we also had free online streaming of previously recorded performances, particularly orchestras and other arts organizations. Next slide. Television and cinemas also were able to adapt because the suspension of entertainment pushed them to the use of video streaming. So video streaming services became massive for those who are at home. And because of this, there was a lot of video on demand services, film archives, and cinema clubs that were able to provide cinema free online streaming. However, because of this increase of video streaming, there was integrated strain on global internet infrastructure, including video conferences such as they are coming out. And people even believe that the pandemic has given us a new means of communication, of having conferences through video. And we believe that this is a positive development because it's cheaper. For example, this event is happening now. If FEMRITE had to bring all of us to Uganda, it would have been a lot of money. In responding, actually, Netflix and YouTube has also increased its own services. And so we are seeing an evolution. People consuming content at a very high rate, those streaming facilities. Next slide. And then, of course, libraries that are adapted by closing public reading rooms, and they also started doing some appointments with occasional drive-in facilities. Now, some of them provided delivery service to vulnerable community groups. And we also have what we call book taxi delivery service. And this has happened all over the world, in parts of Europe, even in Kenya. In my analysis, I saw that Kenya National Library Services Computer Labs was actually converted to data analysis for COVID-19 tests. And all over the world, libraries of different sizes also did their best to provide facilities during the pandemic. For example, the Ghana Library Authority also provided Bible literacy classes via Facebook, while libraries in Israel also did the same, providing free audiobooks. In Namibia, library data services reported that about 65 local libraries provided free Wi-Fi facilities for people because of the pandemic. Yes, sir. And gradually, physical library services started to commence. For example, in many countries, what we did was a phased approach. And many libraries try to avoid what is called any rush opening physical buildings. Continue to implement strict rules on how to mitigate risks. And this included limiting the number of people who patronize the libraries, distancing, services of distance, concentration of patrons within buildings limited, and new hygiene protocols for staff and patrons, such as wearing of gloves when collecting the convicts took place in countries like Australia. And from leaders out of panic wanted to microwave books because they thought that the viruses on the books, and libraries had to warn them that microwaving books will not kill any virus. On the other hand, it may even damage books. So these are some of the things that happen during the pandemic. Next slide. And then we are finished with all this. Now, what is the way forward? Some of the way forward that I identified. And the first is how to empower writers. Because the biggest challenge when writers fail is financial difficulties. Earlier on, we talked about the fact that many writers, even before the pandemic, have to do other things in addition to writing. In the US, 7%. Only 7% of them live on their writing. In the UK, 45%. In Africa, less than 5%. And all these things were worsened by the pandemic. So we needed to think of how to push the writers away from the poverty line. And again, because white publishers have the ability to publish their books. And many of the writers, when they were asked if they wanted to sell money or something about their income, and it was because of this that Power, an African Writers Association, one of the first things we did was to commence what we call an empowerment project for female African writers. And this we did in partnership with our partners. And the idea was to provide some financial support. The writers who are interested, because the writers don't believe in doing any other thing apart from writing to make money. Some writers who are yes to do the money, they now join the project, and the project is ongoing. Next slide. And this is the project which we did in partnership with our partners. We call it an empowerment project of female African writers. We had a virtual meeting here with the invited guest speakers to come and discuss on how to empower female writers. We also had our own colleagues from Togo, the president from the Togo Association. The other came from Uganda to also contribute. And from this exercise, we up to now we have been able to empower many African writers with some financial support to augment what they make from writing. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. And then we also discovered that there are other ways by the writers to also make money apart from their books. Writers should think of other things like book sales, appearance fees, writing for appearance, coaching other writers. There are so many writers who need to be educated, to be guided, or tutors. And then writers who do book reviews also make some money. And then biography writing, including ghost writing, and also the done complement their reality. And like I mentioned earlier, since the advent of the global world crisis, many countries have put in place strategies in sectors of the economy. And so we want to appeal to the countries that have not included artists in this plan. Do so urgently, because there are countries left out artists and writers from these palliative measures, believing that writers don't need money. I think this is wrong. So this is now one of the things that we remind them to do. Just like I also do powder, and I find it to be a sort of income, and I used to enjoy. I used to encourage my youth to also try their hands in graphic writing, because there are so many people who tell their stories and don't have the time or the talent to do so. So we charge them for this, and just let it put out there. So it's a form of good revenue for writers. Next slide. The other way by which writers have started making money because of the field kind of itself is through online publishing, and this is through the digital media, and we discovered that a high percentage of writers in France, 24% of them, thought that digital media did not have much impact on their income, even though we believe that this is something to look at. And also, but for writers of graphic novels, for example, they also believe that the digital media is something that can help their career. However, authors of educational works, they look at the digital media that in a negative way, because we believe to remove their revenue or sometimes with their copyright rights. But we saw that rise in online publishing has encouraged self-publishing as the source, the self-publishing of the online books. And this impact, I believe, of digitalization and online publishing has benefited self-published authors the most, because they can, on their own, do desktop publishing and because themselves print on demand, which can also help them in the way of looking at self-publishing. Next slide. Then, virtual meetings and literary activities are involved, like we are doing now. And as mentioned earlier, literary activities in beating the physical distancing because of the global pandemic has now made the virtual meetings very popular. Although people will still complain that they would love to have physical meetings, virtual meetings are proven to be cheaper and finally appropriate for many literary activities. And in view of the uncertainty in the duration of the pandemic, the practice of meeting virtually will remain with us for a very long time. That's right. And the power of another association, we have also seized in this avenue of meeting virtually, because since I came on board 18 months ago, Power has organized about 6 virtual meetings, and this has helped us to bring together our writers from many parts of Africa, particularly the Francophone, Portuguese, and other different language speaking parts of the continent. And for us in Power, we see a very good development in virtual meetings. Also, it has reduced our expenses, bringing writers all over the continent to Africa, to Accra, is very expensive. Virtual meeting is helping us to put down expenses. Then the social media. The impact of social media has become increasingly prevalent in that of authors, and is viewed particularly important for marketing purposes. Our participation in social network is now seen as crucial for authors who need to make useful contacts and develop opportunities. According to FES committee, over 70% of authors now use social networks to know their books, events and readings, as well as to communicate both with readers and other writers. Understand? And then we believe that even in the period of this pandemic, we need to improve the relationship between authors and publishers. Because in Africa, many writers have always been complaining of poultry royalty return from the publishers. For example, the current president of the General Association, Francis Dominica, interview, said that it's very difficult for authors in Ghana to receive fair treatment for their work. According to him, many authors report fraudulent publishing houses buying the rights to their works and avoiding paying any royalties, sometimes even dissolving their companies to avoid scrutiny. And then authors also receive next to nothing remuneration for widespread copying of their work in copy shops, a practice that undermines market opportunities. Given that publishing or copying are not well policed or regulated, the Ghana President and Ghana Writers, the head of the Ghana Writers Association, believe that digital publishing will also offer a better alternative. So we also need to look into this problem, which I mean there before was now getting worse. Next slide. And then we go into areas of legislations and policies. While the boom in online services will probably be good for writers, we don't need strong copyright laws that will ensure adequate and timely remuneration for authors. Because we saw that in our best to give books, a lot of copyright infringements is taking place. And this is why, if care is not taken, the remuneration that writers are collecting in their works, it starts making them to become endangered because of poultry returns. And talking of legislations, that's any legislation that we do in the copyright framework should understand the difficulties authors usually face making a professional living, both in developed nations and developing countries, where challenges can be most. And all copyright laws be taken into cognizance, fair payment to authors for the use of their works. We also look into areas where we can have endowment for the arts. Countries like Nigeria are trying to put into place legislation for endowment for the arts. But this has not been successful because some civil servants and some leaders believe that once you start giving money to writers, you are empowering them to challenge, speak truth to power, to become difficult to control. Next slide. The reading culture in many African countries, which of course are very poor before, has been worsened by the poverty that came with the pandemic. And this poor reading culture has been identified as an issue, and that is affecting the ability of authors to get to read their country of origin. It's believed that as long as reading culture is good, leadership will also grow. And some of the factors identified for the culture, such as high level of illiteracy, high cost of food production, distraction by the social media, television, and internet, and all these problems need to be tackled if writers are expected to make a decent living from their writing. Next slide. And then financing for literary arts. With the widespread economic downturn brought about by the global pandemic, financing for literary arts by donors, advertisers, and government agencies, as well as funding for literary arts, may experience a decline. Already, some donors have already started sending signals of impending reduction in financial support. We in power with having this because our traditional donors will try to tell us that well, the way things are going, we have to manage the little we have. So in view of this, it is available for literary arts organizations in Africa and all over the world to start within the budgets so that to accommodate the likelihood of a reduction in the finances. Next slide. And then we believe that collaboration are very important in the face of dwindling funds for literary activities as a result of the COVID pandemic. There is a need more than ever before for collaboration between literary actors on the continent. By collaborating with each other and learn from best practices, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And this has happened, and then we can also pool resources together. For example, Power is already collaborating with some major art providers. And in the last few months, we've had a lot of support from people who got things that we don't have. Power has a very large reach in the continent. As of today, we have more than something active organizations on the continent. We have that ability to spread our activities on the continent, and that is our major strength, and that is why we are still willing to collaborate with as many major art providers as possible. Next slide. And in conclusion, I'm happy to look at some of the cases of FEMRITE members who were in Nigeria a few years ago as a Nigerian resident. That is my residency. We've been on for about 10 years now. And this kind of collaboration between the writers' residents and FEMRITE made it possible for some. Doreen is complaining. Doreen was our part of our pioneer writers in the residency. It's not here in the picture. Between us and FEMRITE, we were able to have, I think, about 10 Ugandan writers at the residency. And this is one of the beauties of collaboration. And with this, I want to thank you for listening. Thank you. I'm ready for questions and suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wale, for that fantastic address. Thank you so much for highlighting the serious effects that COVID-19 has had on the literary arts, especially at a time when funding for the humanities, for the liberal arts is really dwindling. Can you hear us? No. Can you hear us now? Can you hear us? Thank you so much, Dr. Wale. Can you hear us now? We really appreciate that fantastic address that has touched on quite a number of issues, particularly highlighting the effects that COVID-19 has had on the liberal arts and the humanities. At a time when funding, particularly for the arts, for the liberal arts is really dwindling. And indeed, you have highlighted the opportunities that have come with this plague, with this pandemic. But I would want you to speak very briefly to what you anticipate would be the future, is going to be the future of the creative expression, particularly when at a time like this, and for the female artists in particular. What do you anticipate as the future for the creative arts? You touched a little bit on things like the stories that, for example, you're writing, the COVID-19 experiences for children. But what do you anticipate is the future for the female?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dorothy. My anticipation as an optimist is positive, because I believe, like I did now, we are already adapting to what I call the new normal. We are now having virtual meetings. We are doing digitalization of our works. We are doing online publishing, and generally we are creating things out of the problems around us. The other things I see for the future, I see, like I said, that could be, this is not a very interesting thing, the reduction in the financial support for the arts. So we need to find a adequate sort of income to sustain literary activities. And that's why I think to mention what individual artists do individually by doing other things, appearance tools, by going to collaboration with other organizations, by even doing other things that will bring in money as a writer, writing biographies, ghost writing for those who want to get their books. So for me, I don't think it's a cause for despair or for the worries. Just needs us to be more creative, and I think we can do it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that response. Do we have any questions in our platform? Shall we have them?
I would like to ask a question. I raised my hand. My name is German and from Lagos.
Could you please speak up? Could you please speak up?
German Anikulapo from Lagos, Nigeria.
Yes, we can
I'm
hear
screaming.
you.
German Anikulapo from Lagos, Nigeria.
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Lagos.
Yes, sure.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Advocate, also for the invitation. I want to speak to you about power. Power is Pan-African Writers Association, and we know the trajectory of power. For a long time, power was actually out of power. There wasn't anything that was happening to power. We know the story, but we won't want to go into our ancestral issue. So I wanted to ask, as power, when the pandemic broke out, we saw what European Union, what even some regional organizations tried to do for their writers, because these are their philosophers, their thinkers. What is African Union doing? Because I can't seem to see what they are doing. I know you are very new in the office, but going forward, what can power help to advance in this cause? I'm saying this because sometimes we need voice for that. African writers and intellectuals want to talk to themselves, have to go over the sea. We're not talking enough to ourselves. I'm impressed with the African writers that we have here who are exchanging notes. But during the pandemic, some of the sessions, some of the literary events that I attended, I could see that hands are actually ready for themselves. But there's something in our psyche that says that we have to go to the US. And I can't find any connection to some of those writers. I would like to really talk to my brothers and sisters on the continent. We share the same reality. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Jamal. Yes, like you said, I'm very new in the office. I would say just 2 months ago, and I came in after the lockdown. But one of the first things we did like I mentioned in my lecture, is to identify ways of supporting our writers. And that's why we try to put in place a project to empower our female writers, to give them a source of alternative income to their writing career. And through this, we've been able to provide some little financial support to augment what our writers are doing. Beyond this, we want to put into place a series of seminars to enlighten our writers on how they can improve their writing, make some extra money. We don't have the money to share to writers, and we don't have the palliative to give out in large numbers, but we can teach them how to fish instead of giving them fish. And the way to teach them is to put in place seminars on how to discover in themselves that there are so many things writing can do to bring in extra income. We mentioned that in my lecture. You can you can organize yourself into book clubs, you can organize libraries, and you can also do a lot of trade across borders. Luckily, we are doing many of these book fairs now, virtually, and this way you can connect each other.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wale, for that response. And I would wish to move on. I hope there are no more questions. We really appreciate your assistance and for the time. For those of you that are still with us, thank you. We appreciate that. We want to move on to the panel discussion on the unfolding world and the literary works. The literary works.
Any contribution before you continue?
Yeah, sure. Make it brief. Very brief. Thank you.
Very brief.
Very brief. I will.
My name is Kole Akintola, and I'm participating in this from Florida.
Brilliant.
I have listened attentively to Dr. Wale Okediro's presentation, and I noticed that he's gone the way of monetizing, sometimes the support. But what I was thinking, it's also possible, is sometimes writers need facilities apart from just money. For instance, there are writers that would like to travel to Uganda, for instance, and if they had somebody give them an accommodation that is subsidized, it will make traveling around Africa. Is it possible for each of the regional arts organizations to make possible certain facilities for writers specifically? Just like Dr. Wale has in Ebedi, that he has this residency. I'm not even asking for residency. I'm just saying, are there possibilities where FEMRITE or the Ugandan Writers Association can say, okay, we're going to have 4 rooms, 5 rooms. We invite South African writers that are coming that we can pass through and pay not market rate. That's one. 2, the other thing I've been thinking is, there are times writers do not only need money, they sometimes need things like collective editing. Is it possible, for instance, for some of these organizations to say, okay, we're going to pay on a monthly basis for an editor. Bring in your works, we will help you make sure that it is presentable for publishing. These little things can help. And then there are ancillaries to books that I think we should also explore. Poetry books, I don't see the reason why we have not started to proliferate posters of some poetry, of poetry works. Even the popular ones, or even the ones that are upcoming, with collaboration with graphic artists or fine artists to produce posters instead of ask the artists to do all of this on their own. Maybe an agency, maybe in power, maybe in Uganda, maybe in South Africa, should come together and say, look, let's do the kind of thing the media houses are doing. They put together their money and they form a wire service. As opposed to each and every one of us doing it. You form a conglomerate that will be financed by all of the regional writers associations. And this regional writers association will now go on to do some of the things writers that do not have big time publishers that they can do. Things that you will take off the heat from writers. I find it a little difficult for a writer to produce and at the same time be made to market, promote, look for speaking engagements when there are agencies that can do that and get a commission and leave the writer to do what they like to do. Thank you very much. Sorry for taking much of it.
Thank you so much, Kole, for that, for those brilliant ideas, and I'm sure Power and FEMRITE and other forums, writers forums that are represented here are taking notes. Those are very good ideas. I know through the platform, somebody has suggested that we need an agency that will produce posters from poetry books in collaboration with fine arts. I think FEMRITE would be a contact for that. At least I know that FEMRITE organizes sessions where they get writers, emerging writers, and they're mentored. They walk, you know, the journey is not walked alone. There's always somebody to walk that journey with them. I'm sure Power is also doing the same, and it's important that as a continent we need to think about the ideas that Kole is putting forward and suggesting for us. Thank you so much. I really wish to move on to the panel because of time constraints. I want to first introduce our panelists and also thank them for really accepting to be a part of this. We have quite a number of brilliant folks that are going to be part of this panel, which will explore the challenges and opportunities that are presented by the changing social-political environment that we are trying to negotiate during this COVID time and probably what we're going to negotiate post-COVID. Our very first panelist that I wish to introduce is Dr. Ali Tucker. He's a teacher of women's and gender studies, literature and writing at Keene State College in New Hampshire for over 15 years. That was before moving to California in 2014. As a certified Amherst writers and artist writing workshop leader and experienced fiber artist, Ali has taught writing and fiber arts in the US, in India, in China, Vietnam, and Peru. She has entrepreneurial business experience and has served on a number of non-profit art boards in various capacities. Dr. Ali is chair of Women's Wisdom Art Board of Directors, where she also currently serves as the acting executive director in addition to teaching writing, fiber arts, and mixed media classes. Our other panelist is Isaac Tibasimba, who teaches in the Department of Literature at Makerere University. He is an African Humanities, an AHP Fellow and researcher in folklore, performance, and post-colonial studies. His research focuses on competition music performance in Uganda and how these intersect with the idea of the Ugandan nation. He teaches introductory courses in literature and communication. Isaac is interested in seeing a world where literature is freely accessed, freely discussed in public spaces. Conversations to him should bring the best of our humanity and openly speak about evils in society. Isaac is currently completing his PhD in literature at Makerere University. Our next panelist is Doreen Baingana. She's a writer, an editor, and arts manager. Her short story collection, Tropical Fish, won the Grace Palais Short Fiction Prize in 2003 and the Commonwealth Prize in 2006. Doreen has been nominated twice for the Kane Prize for African Writers. I'll repeat that, sorry about the interruption. Doreen has twice been nominated for the Kane Prize for African Writers in 2004 and 2005, and she has received other honors including the Miles Mowan Scholarship for African Writers in 2014 and the Rockefeller Bellagio Residency in 2017. She has also published 2 children's books as well as fiction and essays in numerous international journals. Ms. Baingana was managing editor at Story Moja Africa, a chairperson of FEMRITE and co-founding member, and is the director of the Mawazo Africa Writing Institute. Our other panelist is Donald Molosi. He's a Motswana actor, writer, and playwright. Molosi debuted off-Broadway in 2010 as Philly Lutaya in Today It's Me, making him the first Motswana to perform off-Broadway. In 2011, Molosi won the Best Short Solo Award at United Solo Theatre Festival for his performance as Celeste Kama in Blue, Black, and White. In 2013, Molosi returned off-Broadway to perform Motswana, Africa Dream Again. He played supporting roles in the following historic films: A United Kingdom in 2016 and Given in 2009. As a playwright, Molosi has published a collection of his original off-Broadway plays, which include We Are All Blue, Blue, Black, and White and Motswana, Africa Dream Again in 2016. Welcome our panelists. I would like to get us rolling with one general question about what you think has been the role of the literary arts during this pandemic. Maybe I should begin with the artist, with the Motswana actor, Donald Molosi. What do you think has been the role of the literary arts during this pandemic? Donald, are you with us? No. I will move on to Doreen Baingana. What do you think has been what stands out, what sticks out for you as the prominent role of the literary arts during this pandemic?
Good afternoon, or is it good evening?
It is good evening.
Dr. Tuhura.
It is good evening.
And I'm very happy to be here. Thank you, FEMRITE, for organizing this. And thank you, Dr. Wale Okejeran, for such an insightful keynote speech. And of course, to the U.S. Embassy for supporting us, and the previous speakers and my fellow panelists. I am very pleased to be here. As a writer, I think, I'll speak for myself and for others, I think our role right now in the pandemic is witnesses. I think even as we are facing the pandemic, we are called to record it, to reflect on it, and to document not just our own experiences, but the experiences of all of us globally. Our role has always been to maybe voice for the voiceless, speak the unspeakable, and that role remains the same in a time like COVID. So our role is still unfolding. We may not yet have put all that we can stay and write about the pandemic down yet, but it's really to reflect on its effects and how it has made us less or more human. So briefly, I'll say that as an individual writer, that would be my role. As a director of a writing organization, we actually should be enabling our clientele, fellow writers, to overcome the huge obstacles this pandemic has wrought. And of course it depends again on because the organizations themselves have been hard hit on the ability the organizations themselves have. I will stop there for now, but I just say it is to reflect, document, and say what others may fear or may be unwilling or unable to say.
Thank you so much, Doreen. Let's move on to Dr. Ali Tucker. What do you think has been the prominent role of the arts during this pandemic? Dr. Ali?
Good morning, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Sure.
First of all, I agree, Doreen Bangana, the idea of the writer to reflect and to record, to bear witness. I think that's always all through time, and now more than ever, very, very important as a writer, but also, and probably more importantly for me, as someone who facilitates writing and tries to encourage writers. I think it's very important that we find ways to give voice to the voiceless right now. And as was mentioned in the keynote, one of the things that's happening is we're writing virtually, but we are not together physically in community. And that changes things for all of us everywhere. So I just want to read the mission of the women's group that I work with. This is Women's Wisdom Art, and we hope to be collaborating with FEMRITE through a grant at the U.S. Embassy. But we believe the arts and writing are the most ancient, most enduring language through which humans express meaning and value and grow their souls. Engaging in the arts is a fundamental, essential human activity, and I think the word essential is so important during the pandemic. How do we give voice? It's essentially give voice. It's essentially find ways to bring forth all of the stories of all of the people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ali. I want to bounce off what you just said, like giving voices to the voiceless. What do you anticipate is going to be the kind of themes that are going to emerge out of, if given voice?
Some of the themes, Women's Wisdom Art was originally developed as a program for women who were unsheltered without homes. So part of giving voice is finding ways to encourage and listen, to try to truly hear. And the challenges, of course, are that we're all sitting here in this wonderful community today, and we're really privileged, right? We can speak, we can write, we can share, we can get on Zoom. I'm in my studio where I sew and make things, but how do we bring that to people who are don't have so much, right? And one of the traditions I come from, one of my trainings is Amherst Writers and Artists, and there are three tenets here, and I think this is what you're asking, I hope. One is that everyone has a strong voice. Another is that everyone is born with creative genius, everyone. And the last is that writing is an art form that belongs to all people, regardless of economic class or educational training. So during this pandemic, one of the things we're doing as an arts organization is all these Zoom writing classes and lessons. We're also mailing and hand delivering writing materials and prompts. and encouraging stories and trying to find new ways all the time. And working with Hilda, I hope will teach us more ways. The collaboration. Now more than ever, we have to collaborate.
Thank you. I would like to move on to Isaac, who is a researcher in folklore, performance, and post-colonial studies. What do you think has been the role of the literary arts during these unprecedented times? Isaac.
Thank you, Dorothy. I think literature has this thing about it that is timeless, and the beauty about timelessness is the fact that you learn to realize there is a dynamic aspect about how we live, how we express ourselves, how we experience life. And I think the important bit about it then is that we're able to connect with each other in different ways, in really, really different ways. Sometimes it could be through a song, sometimes it could be through a poem, sometimes it could be through a newspaper article that we read and we can relate to or relate with, and so many other things. And so I think what literature has done for us and the arts have done for us at this time is to remind us about the fact that we are human beings, that sometimes we find ourselves low, sometimes we find ourselves really excited about life and so many other things that come with life. And so in thinking through how this works with all of us as human beings, we're able to connect with each other. In a way spiritually, but also in a way that we can then realize that everyone goes through the same situations that we're going through, that we can understand each other because, well, when I read your story, when I read the troubles that someone goes through, then I can understand that, well, I am not alone on this journey. Someone else is going through these issues, and we need to build a site of resilience for ourselves as human beings. And I think that is the power of literature, because I have the feeling that what the times like these have done is that they've disrupted what we've always considered to be the normal. And so that means that writing also ends up in a world that forces us to think through the abnormal, but also to negotiate and navigate those abnormal, or whatever we call abnormal landscapes, and to think through how those different landscapes then affect our lives, but also affect the lives of others. And I think in connecting with each other, in realizing that we are all human beings, then we can understand that this is not just us going through this. Everyone is going through this. Everyone is trying to find a way of coping with this, and we just need to build networks of resilience, networks of strength, networks of hope from whatever we read from others. But also, I want to say this, I've thrown myself at books during this time. It is quite tough because I found myself working more, but I've also found myself reading. I found myself thinking through things that probably I never thought through. And one of the books that came so much to me was a text I read at high school entitled The Plague. And somehow then I started thinking to myself, I was trying to think of it. And out of the new know that this was going to happen. And yet, when I was in high school, that probably did not make sense because, well, we have pandemics, but we were never locked down. And so, having to think through what people have gone through in other areas is one of the things that literature opens us up to and lets us realize we are not alone in this. And if we can learn from others, we definitely can come out stronger at the end of this.
Thank you so much, Isaac. Still going off what you just said, do you anticipate any new trends in performance? For example, in oral performance particularly. During this time, because we've been distanced, we've been locked down everywhere, and this goes also to other panelists. Have you realized the change in performance or potential for changes in performance? There's been a lot of rumors going around during this time. Do you think that is going to be a new form of creative expression that is going to that's going to acquire new meaning as a literary form of expression? Particularly rumors, conspiracy theories, are they going to affect future literary expression?
I recently, there's a friend of mine who sent me YouTube clips of a guy called Uncle Mo. I don't know if people in Uganda have come across Uncle Mo. And I was quite intrigued with one little episode he had, which talked about COVIDios and how COVID has kind of made us become strange human beings. We wear masks and we don't cover the nose, and then we also have all these theories of telling the world there is no COVID in Uganda or there is no COVID in the world. And sometimes these narratives are very, very interesting. I love public spaces, especially performance spaces, for one reason. They awaken you to the reality that sometimes what you may think is true, people do not take it to be true. And I think what performance is then going to have to do is to open us up to these different ways in which people perceive pandemics or people perceive issues of, say, COVID or any other pandemics like Ebola. But also to think about our resilience as people, because the truth is, I think we have this thing about us as human beings that when we're going through a tough time, we have to find a way of making ourselves happy. And I know that jokes have become a big thing around performance currently because people really have talked about COVID. People have drawn. I remember one cartoon I saw that amused me that had these words: coronavirus struck is living, no, a bus is living in Uganda. And the words that these people were saying, anti-Mugani, as in, you have refused to die. And then I remember once that came out, after some time, all of a sudden we had these deaths coming up. And our resilience as Ugandans probably through this time seems to be broken. But also the war on COVID seems to have been broken. The thing though, I think, is that we have to think about our experiences and connect these experiences to others, even as we think about performance spaces. Because we think performance is a representation of our reality. And while we go through all the pain in our society, while we go through all the struggles as human beings, we also have to find ways of thinking through these struggles and finding a place where we can give people hope. So as people joke about these things, as people laugh about these things, as some people actually get serious about these things, we probably have new ways of thinking through struggles, we have new ways of thinking through pain, and new ways of destabilizing even the normal things that we have thought have always been normal in order to create a new normal even in performance spaces. And I think we are just beginning. It's something that is going to evolve over time, but I'm also sure that it will come to a point where we'll say, I think we have gotten to a point where we can go on and go on and stop.
Thank you so much, Isaac. I'll move on to, is Donald with us? Has Donald joined us? Okay. Doreen Bangana, any thoughts about the performance? Anything new that's emerging out of this pandemic as a form of expression in terms of performance? Have you observed any new trends? Thank you.
Okay. I think that's an interesting question, how the pandemic is going to actually change what we do. I actually was part of a theater residency that was supposed to be physical at the beginning of the pandemic, but we had to do it online. And in fact, the actress then made a video that we projected, that was projected online. And so we had to be versatile. I think what has happened for us as writers is one of the problems is that differentiation between literature as a form of high art and then the more of the popular culture. And now we are realizing more and more that people are consuming popular culture. I mean, popular culture has always been popular, but now in a time like COVID where people could still go online even though they couldn't meet, popular culture took up almost all the space. If I add in memes, performances on TikTok, and all that was happening online. So I think this process was already happening prior COVID, but COVID accelerated it. And I think, in a way, it has democratized. Anyone can be a producer of art. It's not only a few, I mean, you may decide to call it art or not call it art, but it's not only a few names that are going to be known for producing stories or narratives. But now anyone can go on TikTok and make a small show about nothing. I find most of the ones that I have seen not to be of the quality that I personally would appreciate, and I still think there should be a differentiation between curated performances, and that there's a difference in quality and creativity. But I think those of us who see ourselves as expression as a form of, I don't want to use the word high art because it sounds so elitist, but something we actually really think through and put in so much of our energy, not for something to show today and to be gone tomorrow. We will have to learn to use these new media forms. I think COVID is a wake-up call for us to use the new media forms and not rely on print and only, or you know, now that we have even less reliance on an actual physical space. I think the online space is going to take a much more even after COVID.
Thank you so much, Doreen. Up to you, Dr. Ali Tucker. What do you think about the emerging trends in performance, especially in the arts? Vis-a-vis the, yeah.
I agree completely, things will transform. I love what Doreen just said about the idea of generative versus craft, maybe. And I think one of the benefits we're seeing is that we're seeing all this generation, this generative part, this raw, first draft, here I am, TikTok, whatever. For me, that's the brilliance, because it starts with that and then it moves into craft. And the idea that it is democratizing, the idea it's accessible for everyone. And that, again, as producers, creators, but also as consumers, we learn so much. And to me, that's amazing. And I think it will absolutely go on, and it connects us. I would love to be there with you physically, but that I can be here and we can be together like this is kind of a miracle, you know? I mean, it is something that that will not go away, and maybe next year I will be able to be with you in person, but maybe between the years we can be together, and maybe I can bring you to other people and you can come, you know. There's much more collaboration possible, I think, and then my hope, because I sincerely believe that writing and literature and performance and art transforms us first as individuals, and then it transforms our communities, our societies. And I think that the transformation, I hope, will bring us to a different place in our world as humans and as people and on this earth. You know.
So, thank you. And so you anticipate the opportunities that this pandemic has actually.
I think there will be opportunities. I think that it's up to us, the public, to be very careful that we get everyone and that opportunity.
Right. Doreen, if I may ask you a question, there's some bit of interaction that's going on. Sorry, Doreen, back to you. What opportunities do you see that have been created by this unfolding times for the literary arts?
Hello.
Hello.
I hope someone who is unmuted, please mute yourself. Opportunities. There have been opportunities. I keep quoting, I don't know if it's true or not, but there's supposedly a Chinese symbol that is for challenge, and it is also for opportunity.
Right.
Yes, we have gone through a really, really tough time, especially economically. Personally, as an organization, and as all of us as writers, but we have to look for the opportunities. Thankfully, at Mawazo, we had already been doing, we do creative writing workshops. We had already been doing online creative writing workshops because we wanted to reach across all of Africa at a low expense without having to fly in writers and without having to pay for their residence, which meant that they could only do shorter workshops. So long before COVID, we saw the advantages of technology and said, why don't we have longer term workshops online? And we had 2 pilot programs which were quite successful long before COVID. And so we realized that online, in terms of the teaching of creative writing, can work. And right as COVID started, I was going to do a workshop with, in collaboration with the Gute Central here in Kampala. It was supposed to be a physical workshop, but thank God for the online apps, we had to shift it to a Zoom, and it worked. Thank God for that. So the opportunity, of course, is that, as Dr. Wale Okederan said, and I do repeat, it is much cheaper. You don't have the airline expenses. It is much, you can do it for a longer duration of time, and you can reach people across the globe. Our own particular interest is African writers, but so we can reach people across all of Africa, but even Africans who are in the diaspora. So that is very, very useful. And then we had the resources of many people who were not necessarily in Uganda. So that was also a huge advantage. I see that opportunity. Of course, the challenge is that not everybody has access to the internet, not everybody has a strong internet, and that is, again, something that needs to be addressed. Another opportunity we had is that for those who are lucky enough to have quiet homes, we had time. Even though many of us were working, we really had time and solitude, which are major ingredients for writing. I mean, I speak for myself, I'm sure others might have been crowded in with many more people at home, so it was even harder to get away. And especially for the women who have to look after everybody else, there's even more work and no time for your space. So perhaps for some, that was not an opportunity in terms of not being able to get away to write, but for others, there was time and space for solitude. Thirdly, we were able to access all sorts of things that went online that were happening abroad that we would not have access. There are all sorts of physical festivals and panel discussions and workshops and all these things that happen in outside countries, as we call them, that we just simply were not accessible to us. And now many of them went online, so there was a whole resource and richness if you were able to tap into that. But I think the biggest opportunity is that we realize that whatever the situation, stories, narratives are central to our lives. How COVID was interpreted, how different people, and it happened even before for us with HIV/AIDS. What does it mean to be ill? What is the stigma of illness? For us, the reality of COVID, with it not being real in our space, but it's sort of real in the atmosphere and on the news, and yet nobody sort of. It was a time for us to see ourselves as global citizens who were for the first time not at the bottom, you know, like with HIV/AIDS, suffering it all, but right now somehow we're not as affected. Some things to think about, where we always seem to be, to face the worst brunt of, you know, whatever happens. And this time it was different. What did that mean? I think we haven't really thought about what COVID meant globally and what COVID meant for us Africans in a space where it was not. I mean, now the numbers are increasing, but it still has not been as horrific as in Europe, Asia, and the States. To think about the implications of that, and there's opportunity in that. What worked? What did we do right? Not what do we always do wrong? I could go on and on. There are many opportunities, but there's a lot to think about and digest.
Right. Thank you so much, Doreen, for mentioning issues of what COVID-19 means for the literary arts. Now, In Crime and Punishment, Dostoevsky's protagonist, Raskolnikov, actually dreamt that the whole world was condemned to a terrible new strange plague that had come to Europe from the depth of Asia. You said that globally we were not down, we were kind of up because of the way COVID has affected us as Africans, as people on this continent, as Ugandans, and probably as literary artists. We're writing about this, we're talking about this. What do you think that means for us? Back to you, Doreen. Is it going to affect the way we express ourselves in our creative expressions, in our imagination, in works of art that are going to emerge from this era? Especially that Crime and Punishment, Camus' Plague, rather Camus' The Plague. All these are works that have come out of such particular context. Do you think it's going to affect, in a way, it's an opportunity for us to write about such things? Issues of identity, issues of race, issues of internationalization, blame stories. Yes.
Definitely. I mean, my thoughts are still very much at a brainstorming stage, very, very nascent. I haven't completely thought it all out. I just had this opportunity to think about it. But off the cuff, it really is, we've been hearing a lot about the story of African rising narratives. But I think we saw real evidence in a situation that had to do with health, where there had been predictions of our complete, like a fire would come across and just burn the whole of Africa with dead bodies lying in the streets. And that did not happen. So what does that mean? It means that despite what we think some of our systems work, do we write about that? I know stories tend to focus on conflict. So we never ever think, for example, in the arts, the government really hasn't been a supporter of the arts. The government has been in fact attacking individual artists and putting them in prison. But if the government could be that efficient initially in dealing with something like COVID-19, what more could it do if it puts its resources together? What are the gaps that it is not doing? That's on the government level. But individually, I thought for us, there are also stories about what does home mean? For women, unfortunately, some women were more unsafe at home. Statistics showed that domestic violence went up during the COVID pandemic. Because if home is supposed to be your safe space, but home is in fact the place that you're attacked, and then in times of stress, you're the nurturer, you may also be the person who brings in the income, everybody's at home, and how do you breathe? And especially as women artists, these are the challenges I think COVID brought starkly. They were always there, but COVID shed a light on exactly what happens in women's lives. Internationally, I think we need to just think about our global position, and think about ways we are not always the victim. I know it's hard for us to think about that because you just look at the GDPs and you would be, but to think about the strengths that we have as different African societies that COVID highlighted, that I think are there that we just don't see because we are so used to a particular narrative. And we as writers, our domain is narrative. So I think we can assist other people in terms of coming up with new narratives about African community, about the advantages we have, about the resources we have. I think I'll stop there. I think there are many, many more. Maybe the other panelists have other ideas that COVID has brought out.
Thank you, Doreen. Ali, Dr. Ali, I'm going to you. And posing a question with regards to what Doreen has raised, the question of, you know, what the plague has done to change the narrative around issues of, you know, sources of this, you know, Africa as a dark continent. This time it's tipped over, things are changing. How has it been? What can you say about the meaning of the pandemic in terms of the story formation, in terms of what's going to be written about, in terms of what stories are going to emerge, in terms of race, ethnicity, you know? Yeah.
Well, where to start?
Right.
Where to start? One of the things that Hilda said at the very beginning, she talked about COVID and mental health. And I think the mental health and what Doreen said, domestic violence, we're seeing absolutely the same thing here. Domestic violence has skyrocketed. Mental health has really struggled, and a lot of the women we write with have mental health issues already. That's, you know, kind of what brings them to us. So we'll see that, of course, here in the United States, the narrative for some time now has been, wow, we are, I don't want to be political. I'm trying to measure my words here, but we have a lot of challenges. We have a lot of challenges, and of course here when you think of domestic violence and mental health, here we have a lot of guns, right? People are not feeling safe. We are going to come to 9 million people with COVID and 250,000 people. This is for the pandemic, relatively speaking, and things are out of control. So the narrative is certainly changed here from this kind of individual colonizing country to wow, we have to wake up and we have a lot to learn. We have a lot to learn. And I think as individuals, as families, I think it's challenging. All of our societies, we have Black Lives Matter, which is a movement that is so strong and so powerful in very positive ways, in very good ways, in ways that are long time coming. So I think the narrative there is people have power, and one of the powers people have is to recreate and to write their own narrative in their own voice. And I think that's part of what's happening here as a change and a shift during the pandemic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ali. I'll go to Isaac. Do you think this is, as a post-colonial studies scholar, do you think the pandemic has presented an opportunity to change the narrative about Africa as a dark continent? For particularly the creative artists, do you think this is an opportunity? Has it presented itself as that?
Thank you, Dorothy. You see, the beauty about Africa is that we are quite an interesting lot of people, if I could say that. Like Doreen said, something about victim narrative that seems to always come up, and people say, the Africans are going to die. And then all of a sudden, everyone is thinking, okay, so what exactly has happened to the Africans? I think what post-coloniality does is that it awakens us to our agency as people. It awakens us to the fact that there is a narrative that we can always contest, a narrative that seems to say, you are the dark continent, you are the people that are going to die on the streets, you are the people that cannot have health systems that work, you are the people that really don't matter at all. The governments don't care about you, and so you're all going to die, and we're going to see dead bodies all over the streets of Kampala. And you see, probably what happened in South Africa was something people thought was, these Africans are really, really going to die. It's happened like that in South Africa. It's going to be worse elsewhere. And then all of a sudden, I got so amused when I had the WHO director saying, those records in Africa are not authentic because maybe something is wrong with the reporting. And it quite amused me that this was an African saying that. Now, for me, as a person who thinks through how we have contested this whole narrative of Africans as victims and Africans as failures and Africans as people who cannot say anything, who cannot stand up to power and speak truth to that power, there is a lot then that comes in play for us as we think about narratives of resistance, especially when it comes to pandemics. And the reason I say this is when we resist the natural, no, not the natural, when we resist the dominant narrative, we're seemingly saying, hey people,
looks like we've lost Isaac. Okay. Isaac. Looks like we've lost.
what?
Yes.
You can hear me now?
Yes, sure, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry. So those of you who probably know James Fire Santongo, he wrote about his experiences in the COVID quarantine area, and someone said that, you see, you're going to get yourself into trouble because of the things that you're writing. And James said, if this is the thing that is going to help people know the truth about what's happening, then we are definitely going to make sure that people get to know what is happening. And so I think post-coloniality gives us a chance to use our voices to let the world know there is a dominant narrative that we would like to contest. And in contesting that narrative, we can come up and say, we can survive this, we can actually go through this, and we can actually connect to each other as human beings. You know, someone talked about social media, and social media has this very strange power of letting us understand. I think it's Doreen who talked about this whole internationalization and the reality that we've come to realize that everything happening in Uganda is happening elsewhere in the world. Everything happening all over the world is connected to everything. And recently I asked someone, whoever thought that schools would shut down for over 6 months? Whoever thought that churches would stop working? Whoever thought that I would wake up in the morning to just take a shower and sit home? Whoever thought of such a thing? And yet, you see, these are narratives that have forced us to then rethink our lives, to rethink how we have probably thought about normalcy, and probably also create new ways of thinking about this normalcy. And I heard you talk about the plague and crime and punishment, and this whole thing of a strange, terrible plague coming over. The reality is also that I think what this has done for us is to open us up to our fears as human beings, to understand that fear is a natural thing, but also fighting fear is an important experience and something that we need to go through as a process in order to heal, in order to connect to each other, in order to give hope to others. And I think the writer's role then is that the writer needs to get their space to write. I think Doreen and Ali talked about home and what home then turns out to be. For me, home is a space where then I can think, where the muses actually come to life to me and awaken me to the reality that, hold on a second, there is this new way of living that I could actually interrogate. There is a way I have tried to navigate it, and I think if I interrogated it deeper, there is something then I'm going to give someone else there. And I think writing gives us that chance, but also home as a safe space, if we allow it to be a safe space in this regard, and not the domestic violence space. If home becomes a safe space, home is actually a space where we will be able to not just observe, but also rethink things that we probably have not thought about. And that can give us a new way of thinking about our lives, a new way of thinking about disease and pandemics, but also a new way of speaking to a power that keeps telling us we are failed states, or we are victim states, or all these things that we hear around us. And I think once we have that agency to speak back to them, we are able then to tell them, by the way, if you had done it this way, maybe this would have helped. I want to say this. I think in Africa we have a way we deal with pain and disease. I think, and it's quite interesting. We create stories around them, but beyond creating stories around them, we ask questions. We have conversations about these things. And I think that is a very important aspect for every writer, to start the conversation. Because as Africans, we need African solutions to the crises that we find ourselves in. And once we do that, we will be amazed at how far we can go.
Thank you so much, Isaac. I want to welcome Donald Molosi. He's online. Are you there with us, Donald, now?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry about the connection. I'm here with you.
No problem. We really appreciate that you're able to join us. We're left with very few minutes. I would like you to say something about the literary arts and why they have been relevant to us during these hard times of COVID-19.
Yeah.
Briefly,
Absolutely.
because we only have 3 minutes to close.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. The time difference, we had a time change here in the UK.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, daylight saving time. But I just want to say that, you know, Botswana is the second, it has the second highest incidences of gender-based violence, which really I call violence against women. We have 92.9% per every 100,000 people, and we don't see that reflected in our literature, that women are being taken to be second-class citizens. And we just experienced actually recently the murder in Parliament of someone who was working in Parliament, in the fashion that we have come to get sadly used to, where women get beheaded in Botswana. That is a weekly occurrence. They get beheaded. There are so many families that bury their daughters and their mothers without their heads. And yet in our literature portrays this country of peace and stability, which is a carryover from the colonial project. That's how they perceived us. When they traveled around Botswana and they wrote their travel literature, the Europeans, they found us to be, they have stories to tell about us that don't capture who we are. Who we are is a violent society. And literature kind of fails us in that the literature from Botswana so far has not adapted to telling the stories that people actually care about. So in my new book, Dear Upright African, where I advocate for the colonial curriculum that we teach in our schools to be changed, I also ask that we teach things like consent, what rape is, and how serious it is that to be a woman in Botswana is a dangerous existence. And so I just want to say that that's where literature, I think, comes in. It gives voice to these narratives about just how dangerous Botswana is, but also in a way that decolonizes our thinking of ourselves. Because if we keep reading this travel literature written by Europeans, we will all think Botswana is a haven of peace. But we don't know that Botswana is being ruled by a state of emergency, during which there's been a rise in gender-based violence, there's been a rise in violence against women, there's been so many beheaded women, and it has been the most disturbing thing for me. And I think that, especially now when the government is under state of emergency and they have the power to shut down publishing houses, so that people like me cannot tell those stories, I think that this is something I'm very happy to say to the world, that we need their attention on it. We need people to stop saying Botswana is this haven of peace, because to be a woman in Botswana is dangerous, and it's dangerous because we teach a very toxic masculinity. So I'll just end by saying that I really hope that the state of emergency that is going on in Botswana, that has been going on for 8 months, can stop so that literature can progress. Because while it is going on, writers like myself cannot express the horrors that women experience in Botswana.
Thank you so much, Donald. We really missed you for the bigger part of the session. But thank you so much for pitching in. I want to appreciate all our panelists. We're out of time, but I want to really close with a few words from all of you, the panelists. I'll start with Dr. Ali. Just a few words on what the literary arts have really done during this time of the pandemic. How important have they been to us? Quickly, in a few words.
They're critical. They're critical. They help us shape and understand. The American writer James Baldwin, who lived in exile much of his life, said, "I write to find out what I think." And it helps us figure out what we think, what we know, and share it with others. And it also helps us know others. So thank you very much. This has been a really wonderful morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ali. Doreen, to you, why do you think the arts have been very, very important during this pandemic? Do you think they should be funded? Have they played any role during this time of the pandemic? In a few minutes, Doreen.
I think I'd like to say that perhaps we have not played as much a role as we should have or could have, because many of us have our hands tied behind our back because of just trying to make a living. And I'm glad we have a panel on making a living. But the kind of work we do doesn't end. We still have time to look back and do something about it. One thing that COVID has, I think, highlighted, aware of the greater divide, class, economic income between rural and urban, those with access online and those without. And perhaps it's also an age gap with a huge number of youth who most likely have less resources. I really want to call on the writers who do have these resources, myself included, to try and see what was happening in the rural areas during this time of pandemic. What was happening so-called slum areas of the urban areas where we live. Because I think that the divide, even as the crisis was affecting us all, it tends to affect those in poverty much harder. And those who can't read and write, those who don't have access to the internet. And I think for those of us who are writers who may have this privilege, to see what we can do to not have people, for example, in the rural area almost do not exist when it comes to things like the literary work, at least in maybe on radio, but in other forms of media. So I'm making a call to writers to try and reach out beyond our own privileged spaces, and it's a call to myself as well. I just like to say I have a workshop on our COVID stories this Friday. It's part of the FEMRITE workshop. This Friday, 6 to 8, you need to register. We can explore more of these COVID stories and how to write about them this Friday evening.
Thank you so much, Doreen.
Thank you.
Isaac, anything you have to say about the role of the literary arts during these unprecedented times? In 1 minute.
I think the literary arts are here to stay, to awaken us to our humanity. And like we have argued about this, really not argued, presented this, stories are around us. Stories are the reason why literature exists. Stories are the reason that we are connecting with each other. And so what you and I experience, what everyone experiences, is a narrative that can be woven to create a unity of humanity. But also stories are things that then we can easily not just get access to, but also be able to understand as part of our own experience and the experiences of others. So what literature is doing? Literature is awakening us to the reality that storytelling still has a strong power, and that power can never at any one point be underestimated, whether we like it or not.
Thank you so much, Isaac. I want to close by appreciating all of you, dear panelists. Thank you so much for putting in your time, Thank you so much for the brilliant discussions and ideas that you fronted on this panel. I want to appreciate our viewers. Thank you so much for sticking with us through this time. We appreciate you, and I hope you have enjoyed this panel like I have, and have learned quite a lot of things. We want to appreciate our partners, Makerere University Literature Department, the US Vision Uganda, and our international and local partners. We really appreciate you. We appreciate your partnership. We appreciate your support. Thank you so much. The FEMRITE Week of Literary Activities is still ongoing. Please endeavor to be a part of us. Walk this week with us. We're still here. Thank you so much. I want to close and hand over to FEMRITE. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much to Dr. Dorothy Afura for moderating this session of the FEMRITE Week of Literary Activities. On behalf of FEMRITE, my name is Nakuya Bridget. I would like to thank our keynote